Today I'm going to be visiting several cemeteries in Oklahoma. First, I decided to make a quick stop at the Fort Smith National Cemetery in Fort Smith, Arkansas. The Fort Smith National Cemetery is located adjacent to the Fort Smith National Historical Site in downtown Fort Smith, Arkansas. The fort's old post cemetery became a national cemetery in 1867 when the Civil War soldiers who were buried on nearby battlefields were exhumed and reinterred here. Today, the Fort Smith National Cemetery consists of about 22 acres and is the final resting place of about 15,000 veterans and their families. The Fort Smith National Cemetery was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1999. The Fort Smith National Cemetery is the final resting place of Judge Isaac Parker, who was the well-known hanging judge of the Old West. Isaac Parker was born on October 15, 1838, near Barnesville, Ohio. At the age of 17, he began studying law and passed the Ohio bar exam in 1859. A short time later, he moved to Missouri and soon opened his own law practice. During the Civil War, Parker continued to practice law and dabbled in politics while serving in the 61st Missouri Regiment. Following the war, he was elected to the United States House of Representatives, serving from March 1871 until March 1875. In early 1875, President Ulysses Grant nominated Parker for a seat on the United States District Court for the Western District of Arkansas. He was confirmed and took his seat on the bench on March 19, 1875. He served on the federal bench for the next 21 years, during which time he tried 13,490 cases. Judge Parker was known as the hanging judge, sentencing 160 people to the gallows. Of those 160 people he sentenced to hang, only 79 were actually executed. In 1896, Judge Parker's health began to fail as he was suffering from Bright's disease, and at times he was too ill to take the bench. Judge Isaac Parker, the legendary hanging judge, died on November 17, 1896. He was 58 years old. Just a few blocks from the National Cemetery is the Fort Smith National Historic Site. There you can visit Judge Parker's courtroom, along with the jail and a replica of the gallows. It's well worth a visit if you find yourself in the area. Now, it's time for me to cross the Arkansas River and head to Oklahoma. After crossing the Arkansas River on Highway 64, I've made my way through rural Oklahoma. You either have to live here or have a reason to travel these country roads, and my reason was to visit the Aiken Cemetery. The Aiken Cemetery is a rural community cemetery located on Oklahoma Highway 101 northeast of Sallisaw, Oklahoma, and it is the final resting place of Charles Arthur Floyd, better known as Pretty Boy. Charles Arthur Floyd was born in Georgia on February 3, 1904, and lived there until about 1911, when his family moved to rural Oklahoma. His life of crime began at the age of 18 when he was arrested for stealing $3.50 from a local post office. 3 years later, he was arrested for a robbery in St. Louis and served 3 years of a 5-year sentence before being paroled. After being paroled, he continued his life of crime and was involved in a number of robberies throughout the Midwest. It was during this time that a witness described him as a pretty boy with apple cheeks. The name stuck, and he would forever be known as Pretty Boy Floyd, a name that he hated. On June 17, 1933, Floyd participated in what is known as the Kansas City Massacre, where 4 law enforcement officers were killed. A short time later, following the death of John Dillinger, Pretty Boy Floyd became public enemy number one, and FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover assigned his top agent, Melvin Purvis, to track down Floyd and those with him. It took Purvis and his men a little over a year to track down Floyd, and on October 22nd, 1934, law enforcement officers located him in a house near East Liverpool, Ohio. Floyd fled into a cornfield behind the house, where he was shot and killed. Floyd's body was embalmed and put on display at a funeral home in East Liverpool before being sent back to Oklahoma, where his body was once again put on public display in Salisal. His funeral the next day was attended by over 20,000 people, and to this day remains one of the largest funerals ever held in the state of Oklahoma. Resting next to Pretty Boy are his parents, Walter, who died at the age of 51 in 1929, and his mother, Mamie, who was 97 years old when she died in 1978. The Floyds had another son named E.W., who was very popular in the area and well thought of throughout this part of Oklahoma. You see, E.W. Floyd, Pretty Boy Floyd's younger brother, served as the sheriff of Sequoyah County, Oklahoma from 1949 until his death in 1970. After traveling about 140 miles west on Interstate 40, I arrived at my next stop, the New Hope Cemetery in Meeker, Oklahoma, which is the final resting place of Baseball Hall of Famer Carl Hubbell. Carl Hubbell was born in Carthage, Missouri on June 22nd, 1903, but grew up here in Meeker, Oklahoma. His baseball career began in 1926 when he was signed by the Detroit Tigers, who, to say the least, were not impressed with his ability. After bouncing around the minor leagues, he was released by the Tigers, and a short time later, picked up by the New York Giants. Carl made his major league debut for the Giants on July the 26th, 1928, and never left. He played his entire career with the New York Giants and retired following the 1943 season. During his career, he amassed a record of 253 wins and 154 losses, with a total of 1,677 strikeouts and an ERA of 2.98. He was a 9-time All-Star and was a National League MVP in 1933 and 1936. But he is best remembered for his performance in the 1934 All-Star Game, when he struck out 5 future Hall of Famers in succession: Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Jimmy Fox, Al Simmons, and Joe Cronin. He was inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame in 1947. Even after he retired and the Giants moved to San Francisco, the meal ticket, as he was called, remained on the team's payroll for the rest of his life. In retirement, he made his home in Mesa, Arizona, and it was there that he died on November the 21st, 1988, following a car crash in downtown Mesa. He was 85 years old. It was late in the day when I arrived at the Memorial Park Cemetery in Oklahoma City. This is a very large cemetery located north of downtown, and most of the graves here are marked with flat and horizontal markers. But many of the notable graves have a find a grave record that include accurate GPS coordinates. The grave that I'm looking for is easy to find in just a short walk from the bell tower at the center of the cemetery. There's a large monument in the center of the road that marks the final resting place of noted aviator and self-taught scientist Wiley Post. This large Oklahoma historical monument stands just a few feet from the final resting place of Wiley Post. The monument details the life and accomplishments of one of Oklahoma's most famous citizens. Just across the road from the monument is this path that leads to the grave of Wiley Post and his wife May. The first marker you come to marks the family plot. The actual graves are just a few feet further in. Wiley Post was born in Texas on November 22, 1898. At the age of 5, his family moved to Oklahoma. By the age of 13, he became interested in aviation when he saw an early airplane flying around the county fair. He had a somewhat troubled life as a young adult, took a job working in the oil field, where an accident cost him his left eye. He used a settlement to buy his first airplane, and the rest, as they say, is history. During the course of his career, Wiley Post set a number of aviation records, including the first person to fly solo around the world, and he is credited with discovering the jet stream and inventing the first pressurized flight suit. During his career, he became fast friends with fellow Oklahoman Will Rogers, who accompanied Post on a trip to Alaska in 1935. Shortly after taking off from a lagoon near Point Barrow, Alaska, the plane crashed, killing 2 of Oklahoma's favorite sons. Resting beside Wiley is his wife, May. The two were married on June 27, 1927. Following Wiley's death, she lived quietly in Oklahoma and Texas until she died on March 16, 1984, at the age of 74. While I was at the Wiley Post Monument, I found that I was only a few steps from the grave of one of Oklahoma's most famous sports figures. His so I made the short walk to the grave of Bennie Owen. Bennie Owen was born July 24th, 1875 in Chicago. He attended the University of Kansas, where he developed an interest in football. After graduating, he was hired as the head coach at Washburn College before moving on to Bethany College, where he coached from 1902 to 1904. In 1905, he was hired as the head football coach at the University of Oklahoma, where he coached until 1926. And in 1906, he was hired as the university's baseball coach, a position that he held until 1922. In 1908, the university hired him to coach the basketball team and held that position until 1921. He is still one of the very few people to coach 3 major sports at one university at the same time. In honor of his accomplishments, Owen Field at the university's Memorial Stadium is named in his honor. And in 1951, he became a charter member of the College Football Hall of Fame. Bennie Owen died in Houston, Texas on February 26, 1970. He was 94 years old. This is where I'm going to end this video. If you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up below. If you want to be notified of when I post future videos, please subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching.